The human brain is the central organ of the nervous system, but that definition barely captures its role. It does not only think. It integrates sensory input, assigns meaning, predicts outcomes, and sends coordinated commands to the body. Every second, it balances automatic survival functions with flexible decision-making. While you read this, your brain is regulating breathing and heart rhythm, tracking language, filtering distractions, and updating memory in parallel. This is why the brain is better understood as a dynamic control network, not a single processor. Together with the spinal cord, it forms the central nervous system, but the brain is where high-level integration happens. It decides what deserves attention, what can be ignored, and how to prioritize competing demands. In practical terms, that means it can shift rapidly between reflexive responses and deliberate reasoning. The same organ that lets you pull your hand from danger also allows long-term planning and abstract thought. To understand behavior, emotion, and intelligence, we have to understand this layered architecture of continuous coordination. At the broadest level, the brain has three major parts: the cerebrum, cerebellum, and brainstem. The cerebrum is the largest and handles complex cognition, conscious perception, language, and voluntary action. The cerebellum, positioned below and behind, fine-tunes movement and timing and increasingly appears important for cognitive precision too. The brainstem links brain and spinal cord and sustains core life functions such as arousal, breathing regulation, and basic autonomic control. A useful way to frame this is strategy, calibration, and infrastructure. The cerebrum generates goals and interpretations. The cerebellum improves execution quality by reducing error. The brainstem keeps the platform alive and responsive. None of these units works independently. If one degrades, the others can no longer express full function. This is why brain injury patterns differ so dramatically depending on location. A small lesion in one region can alter language, while another can destabilize balance, and another can threaten consciousness itself. Functional diversity begins with structural organization. The cerebrum consists of two hemispheres connected by commissural fibers, with the corpus callosum as the largest bridge. Each hemisphere has an inner white matter core and an outer gray matter cortex. Gray matter is rich in neuron cell bodies and local circuitry. White matter contains myelinated axons that move signals efficiently between distant sites. This distinction matters because cognition depends on both local computation and long-range communication. A region can specialize, but behavior emerges only when distributed regions synchronize. The hemispheres are broadly symmetrical in form, yet some functions show lateral bias. Language often leans left, while certain visual spatial operations often lean right. But this is not a split personality model where each side owns separate minds. Most meaningful tasks recruit both hemispheres through continuous exchange. The common left brain versus right brain stereotype misses the point. The key property is cooperation at scale. Hemispheric specialization improves efficiency, while interhemispheric connectivity preserves integration. The result is a system that is both differentiated and unified. The cerebral cortex is functionally layered. The neocortex has 6 layers with distinct neuron populations and projection patterns, while the older allocortex has 3 or 4 layers. These layers shape how signals enter, transform, and exit cortical networks. You can think of layered cortex as a structured routing stack, not a uniform sheet. The cortex is also partitioned into frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes. The frontal lobe supports executive functions like planning, self-control, reasoning, and abstract decision-making. The parietal lobe integrates bodily sensation and spatial relationships. The temporal lobe contributes to auditory processing, memory-associated functions, and language-related operations. The occipital lobe is highly specialized for vision. Still, lobe labels are starting points, not full explanations. Real-world tasks such as conversation, driving, or social judgment are network events crossing multiple lobes. Modern neuroscience emphasizes this network logic, regions contribute characteristic operations, then combine into larger functional systems. The cortex is powerful precisely because it is both modular and deeply interconnected. Beneath the cortex lies a dense set of subcortical structures that regulate flow, salience, motivation, memory, and endocrine integration. The thalamus is often called a relay, but it is better described as a selective gate, shaping what reaches cortical awareness. The hypothalamus links neural states to hormonal and autonomic responses, helping regulate temperature, hunger, stress, and circadian rhythms, partly through control of the pituitary axis. The epithalamus and pineal region contribute to regulatory signaling relevant to biological timing. Limbic structures like the hippocampus and amygdala play critical roles in memory encoding and emotional tagging. The hippocampus is essential for forming new episodic memories, while the amygdala helps assign urgency or threat relevance. Basal ganglia circuits help choose and sequence actions, supporting habit learning and movement control. When these systems malfunction, effects can appear as memory loss, emotional dysregulation, compulsive patterns, or motor disturbance. So while the cortex supports conscious narrative, subcortical systems strongly influence what enters that narrative and how strongly it drives behavior. The brainstem includes the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata, and it is indispensable. It carries ascending and descending pathways while sustaining many automatic processes required for survival. Because these pathways are compact and critical, disruption can produce severe deficits quickly. The cerebellum, connected through 3 pairs of cerebellar peduncles, continuously compares intended and actual output to reduce error. This is why it is central to balance, coordination, and motor learning. If cerebellar computation is impaired, movement may become inaccurate, poorly timed, or unstable even when strength is preserved. Importantly, cerebellar influence likely extends beyond movement into cognitive timing and optimization, reinforcing the idea that neural systems reuse core computational principles across domains. The cerebrum may define goals, but the cerebellum improves precision, and the brainstem maintains operational continuity. Together, they convert intention into reliable action. This triad reminds us that intelligence is not only about abstract thought. It also depends on stable physiology and high-fidelity execution. At the cellular level, brain function depends on neurons and glial cells in enormous numbers. The human brain contains more than 86 billion neurons and roughly a similar number of other cells. Neurons communicate through electrical impulses and neurotransmitter release at synapses, forming pathways and circuits that scale into complex networks. Neurotransmission is the basis of signaling, but context matters. Receptor type, local chemistry, and network state all influence outcome. The same neurotransmitter can produce different effects in different circuits. Glial cells provide metabolic support, regulate extracellular conditions, participate in signaling environments, and help maintain tissue stability. They are active partners, not passive filler. Learning and adaptation rely on changing connection strengths and circuit dynamics over time, which is why experience can reshape brain function. This plasticity enables skill acquisition and recovery, but it can also reinforce maladaptive patterns. Brain computation is therefore multiscale. Molecules influence cells, cells form circuits, circuits create behavior. Any explanation of mind that ignores one of these levels is incomplete. The brain is heavily protected but still vulnerable. The skull provides mechanical defense, cerebrospinal fluid cushions tissue, and the blood-brain barrier limits many bloodborne threats. The ventricular system, with 4 interconnected ventricles, produces and circulates cerebrospinal fluid, supporting both physical buffering and biochemical homeostasis. These protections are necessary because brain tissue is highly sensitive to oxygen disruption, inflammation, and pressure changes. Yet protection is not immunity. Trauma can damage networks through impact and shear forces. Stroke can abruptly cut blood supply, causing fast neuronal death and downstream circuit collapse. Degenerative disorders such as Parkinson's and Alzheimer's progressively degrade specific systems, while multiple sclerosis disrupts communication by affecting myelin. Tumors, whether primary or metastatic, can compress or infiltrate critical pathways. Psychiatric illnesses like schizophrenia and major depression are associated with dysfunction at circuit and systems levels, even when no single structural lesion is obvious. The core lesson is this: complexity creates extraordinary capability, but also many failure modes. Neuroscience advances by combining methods, because no single tool can capture the full brain. Neuroanatomy maps structures from gross regions to microscopic organization. Functional imaging tracks activity patterns and connectivity during tasks or rest, offering spatial insight into network engagement. EEG captures electrical dynamics with strong temporal resolution, useful for studying timing, rhythms, and state transitions, though with lower spatial precision than some imaging modalities. Clinical neurology adds causal clues. When focal injury changes function, researchers can infer role relationships between region and behavior. Historically, brain injury cases provided major breakthroughs in localization, and modern work integrates these observations with imaging and computational analysis. Animal models contribute mechanistic detail difficult to access in humans, especially at cellular and synaptic levels. Progress comes from convergence across evidence streams, not from one decisive measurement. This is essential because brain function is context-dependent and adaptive. Networks reconfigure with task demands, learning history, and physiological state. Mapping the brain therefore means mapping dynamic relationships, not just static anatomy. One reason the brain remains so compelling is that understanding structure and function still does not fully solve consciousness. Philosophy of mind has long asked how subjective experience relates to physical processes, and neuroscience continues to identify correlates without complete explanatory closure. What is clear is that mental life depends on biological brain activity and distributed network interaction. Perception, memory, affect, and self-modeling emerge from coordinated circuitry rather than a single center. This complexity has repeatedly invited oversimplification, from 19th-century phrenology to modern myths that isolate personality traits to tiny regions. Better models emphasize probabilistic, network-level contributions shaped by context. The brain is not a map of one-to-one labels, it is a living system of constraints and possibilities. Its operations are predictive, integrative, and adaptive, constantly balancing internal states with external demands. So the deeper takeaway is not just that the brain is complicated. It is that identity, agency, and behavior emerge from ongoing negotiation across many interacting layers. Understanding that negotiation is the frontier of brain science. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.